Hello, Boston chapter members. This is Lisa Tosti, the chapter membership director. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Jenna Lowe, a fellow Mainer, which makes it even more special. And this is for the July 2026 member spotlight. So welcome, Jenna. Thank you so
Thank
much
you. Thank you for
for
having
joining
me.
me. So fun. So we will start with your big three. Do you mind sharing those?
Sure, I am a Leo sun. Yay, July spotlight. I am a Gemini moon and I am an Aries rising.
I'm a Gemini moon too. I forgot about that. Cool. Anything in particular, and it doesn't have to be, but is there anything in particular about your chart that you feel really captures your essence?
Yes, actually, it captures my essence. That's a good prompt. I have a ready septile sailboat in my chart,
Ooh,
which is my favorite
tell,
claim to
tell
fame.
me more about that. That's not something I think I'm familiar with.
Well, so subtiles, it's like the seventh harmonic,
Nice.
and I'm obsessed with Chiron, and Chiron has the 51-year return, and subtiles are about a 51. It's a irrational number, so it's like point da 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 da, but it's 51 point da 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 degrees, and in my chart, I have three subtiles, and then the bottom goes to a trisubtile to my chart ruler Mars in the 10th. And then these ones go from bisubtiles to my chart ruler. So it looks like a cute little sailboat sailing along.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so, how does that describe you in terms of like using, words to describe um the energy of that?
Well, I'll start with irrational because
Yeah, that's
it is
cool.
an irrational number. It can be very creative and have like almost like a untethered type of inspirational energy to it. Like you connect things or have like almost a romanticized view of wanting to connect certain things or wanting to just kind of go out in the world. And it's important to note that the top of it is my Mars that is unaspected,
Don't ask.
Ptolemaically. So the
Okay.
septile holds it, but and then it's also
Right.
very out of bounds. So my Mars energy tends to be either it's tapped in or it's very sleepy. So a lot of times when it gets tapped in, it's in these like kind of like almost manic fashions of creative inspiration. I saw Andrea Gertz talking once on an OPA lecture series about never waste a mania. And the way she destigmatized, like, if you get creative inspiration at 10 o'clock at night and you stay up all night, don't let society tell you that's not okay. It is
Very
okay.
cool.
And
Very
the minute
cool.
I wrapped my mind around that, I was like, boom, unlocked. Let's go.
That's beautiful and so important that you heard it, right?
Yeah.
You were meant to hear that. That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. So I've never asked anyone this before, and you can say no if you want, but when we do the when you do the little written portion for the blog post,
Mhm.
if you're willing to share your birth data,
Yeah.
I think folks might really I know I would love to do your chart and and look at that. I
Yeah.
like to see it and kind of better understand it. That's very
Yeah,
cool.
definitely. Make sure you have so David Hamlin, who unfortunately passed away, so I can't get a reading from him. I was prepared for you to say, if you could get a reading from any astrologer, who would it be? And I would say David Hamlin. So I'll ask
Cool.
myself that question. But he says add series into your chart for harmonics and also add Vesta. My Vesta isn't really part of the sailboat. It has its own actual subtile aspects, but it yeah, so add those in and then you'll see it.
Okay, okay, that's cool. That's cool. All right, so we'll make sure that that gets included in the written part so people can play with that.
Sure.
So, no, I know the story, but I want you to share it with others. How, kind of like what NCGR membership means to you, but I think, it's kind of how it started for you, what brought you to the Boston chapter, because you haven't even had a full year with us yet.
No, I haven't. It's funny. This morning I
Yeah.
looked it up. I was like, are my dues overdue at all? Because I should probably pay that
I'll let
before.
you know, my friend. No worries.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
letting me know. So I joined actually, it was early December of 2025 because my friend Catherine O'Connell, she reached out to me and we were just having a phone conversation about I love her work on Saturn, and she was like, "Oh, Jenna, I'm doing a Saturn presentation for the Boston chapter of NCGR. You have to be a Boston chapter member though." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not even a member." And she was like, "Well, join and come to it." And I was like, "Oh, sure." So that's how I joined. And
Oh, I
yeah, it
love it.
was really cute to be in the audience. She gave me a shout out during. She's like, "Jenna's my people."
I know. She's great. So how did you meet Catherine actually then?
I actually saw a different Saturn lecture that she gave, and then
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
started emailing with her, and we realized because she's originally from Massachusetts area, and then we
Right.
saw all these like overlaps, even where she lives now. Like a lot of her story. Granted, I never worked for in Washington D.C. advising
Right.
presidents, but there
Right.
were other parallels in our chart in our stories that I was like, you're just so neat and cool. And I got married last year, and my wedding ring has pink sapphire
Ooh.
gemstones in it because of what Catherine says about how pink sapphires blend the sapphire energy of Saturn for longevity and pink for Venus. And I was like, I
Oh.
have to have that as my wedding ring because she said that.
Oh, that is fantastic. Yeah, she's a gem. Totally.
Oh,
Totally.
Jen.
Yeah, no pun intended. That just came out. Must have been in my head though from what you were saying. That's so funny. Okay, that's great. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. And I did thank her too, by the way, um, for encouraging you to join, which clearly you had no problem doing
Nope.
willingly. So, anyways, so back to more the beginning for you. So, how did astrology find you, or you find astrology, or and kind of like, who were your mentors, teachers?
Yeah.
What did you want to
So I would say when people hear how short I've been doing astrology, they're often like, "What? And you already practiced for years?" I'm like, "Well, it just pushed itself on me."
share?
So
Past life, maybe? A past life, maybe?
it probably actually
Sometimes
good
I
point.
think that, it's just like you're just reconnecting with it.
Yeah, well, I found out so I was adopted, and my biological grandmother on my dad's side was really into astrology. Yeah, well, before she became a televangelist, really
Okay.
into that. So my whole paternal side is like, be very careful you don't get into Christian television. Like, this is a segue. I'm like, it is not a gateway drug to that. Don't worry. I will not follow those footsteps.
I
But
love,
yeah, so it's definitely in my lineage, so to speak. But in November of 2019, I had a turned dear friend reach out to me through our homeschool community, and I just knew her through the community, and she said, "Hey, would you ever want a chart reading, an astrology reading?" And I was like, "Huh." I was like, "I'm a Leo sun," and that's like all I knew. My Leo sun is in the fifth house. So a
oh,
lot of the stuff they
perfect.
say about Leo suns really
Yeah.
gets for me because it's like the sun in its dignity, in its house it wants to be in. So I always kind of had this like, there's something to this. But I had no idea what a natal chart was or anything like that. So we had just bought our house. That's a different story. But we had just bought our house, and I was like, hey, so our closing got delayed by 2 weeks because of wire fraud, and I don't have any furniture, and our toilet's leaking through the ceiling. Do you still want to come over? And she was like, yeah, why not? I was like, okay, we're just gonna have to
Oh,
sit on my daughter's empty bedroom floor and do this. So it was us across the house in my daughter's bedroom, which is perfect because my daughter has five placements in Pisces. So it was very like
oh,
mystical at the same time.
yeah.
And
Wow.
we sat there with her little laptop and she read my chart. And I was like, how do you know more about me than I know about me?
Wow.
Like it was, and so I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. Yeah.
So that astrologer, by any chance, did they come to the main in-person meeting that we had? Is this someone that?
No, no.
Okay. Okay.
She's very, how do I say this? She likes to stay home. She
Yeah.
doesn't like to
Yeah.
talk to people.
No,
So,
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Hey,
So
and
I've tried to kind of pull her into a lot of groups. I actually ran a book club with her. I was really trying to get a local astrology group going, and no one would read the book, but which I found very frustrating. But it ended up turning, and we'd go to her house, and it was very like
okay.
we'd invite people that like felt safe, and it ended up being kind of like a core group of six of us, and we were trying to read Stephen Forrest's Book of Fire because it's
Oh,
one of my favorite books.
okay.
And so that kind of got our little community going a little bit, but yeah, other than that, we kind of just are
Well,
friends.
maybe we can work on it offline. But anyways, so that's got everything rolling for you then.
Yeah, so she was working with Leo Tallarico. He passed away. But she was working with him on a weekly basis. So then I started immediately working with him on a weekly basis. And his approach was a little bit evolutionary astrology, which is what my approach largely is. But it was great to work with someone who really knew astrology, kept me focused on my studies, was willing to look at all sorts of different charts with me and really opened my eyes to the nuance and the power inherent within an astrological lens.
Yeah, yeah. Great. So then after Leo, who did you study with or have you
After,
studied with?
yeah, after Leo and I parted ways after about a year, and then I started really deep diving in on my own, getting really into all sorts of work with evolutionary astrology, reading some of the more and not just evolutionary, reading a lot of Dane Rudyard, reading some of the greats. I was looking at like Liz, I'm like literally looking at my bookshelf right now.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of it is evolutionary though. And I got super into like the minor aspects, specifically quintessiles, quintiles for people who prefer
Wow.
that
Very cool.
yeah, so then I was deep in my studies with the with great I have a Grand Cross. So I was looking at my Grand Cross and I was deeply in that. I was on Stephen Forrest's list to get a reading. I reached out to him. Um we're sort of friends, me and Steve now, and I did end up getting a reading from him. And my response to getting a reading from him was to sign up for his school.
Okay.
So then I went through the Forest School for Evolutionary
That's
Astrology.
it. And that's when you traveled, right?
Yeah, towards the end, I was in the master's program at that point, and I went to Greece, so I could meet Steve in person and have my own sort of like spiritual pilgrimage. At that time, too, I was also doing one-on-one tutoring with Lisa Jones, who works for Steve's school. She also does the peer groups with Opa. She's a Opa in Australia. She lives in Australia. I did their professional development group through OPA as well. At this point, I was already a practicing astrologer because I would just talk about it constantly. So it started with my friends being like, "Can I get a reading?" And I'm like, "What is that? What, no." And then I was like, "I mean, I guess." So I kind of was like bullied into being an astrologer. No, I'm just kidding. But it was I started reading for them. That was even before I started going to school. And then my own kind of studies and practice kind of just took off from there. But when I was in Greece, it was my first time being in Greece as well as Europe, and it was the most spiritual experience
Wow.
of my life. Like just
Very
it
cool.
was I knew it would be life-changing. I didn't know what that meant until it happened. So, yeah.
Very, very cool. Very cool. So do you are you working with anyone now or are you just pretty much doing your thing?
Now, I'm at the Dwarf Planet University
Oh,
because
okay.
I'm kind of obsessed with trans-Neptunian objects. And it's interesting because I was really heavily into me and Andrea, the woman who had said the thing
First.
about never waste a mania. We became good friends. And so I started doing a lot of live streams and podcasts with her.
Okay.
So she's had me on her show with Ricky Williams, and then Ricky Williams works with Stephen Forrest. So like it was the tie-ins just kind of kept
Wow.
coming. But Yeah, so I forgot what the question was.
Basically, if there was anyone that you're currently working with,
Oh,
or you,
Dwarf Planet University. That's
yeah,
what I was.
right.
So, Andrea does clowning to kind of like to offset, and then Alan Clay, who is who runs Dwarf Planet University, has a book on clowning. So I was like, this
Oh,
feels aligned. Yeah, so I reached out to Alan. That's my big thing. If I see you in an Opal lecture, I'm gonna reach out to you. If I'm like that spoke to me, let's be friends. So I reached out to
cool.
Alan and we had some emails back and forth and I was mostly excited about the synchronicity of astrology and clowning. And he was like, "Oh, I have a movie, I have a book, like all this stuff." So I came into Dwarf Planet University through a different sort of avenue, finding him in that route. And then I've done a lot of work with my clients as well as just on my own with Sedna in particular, but also Orcus, a lot of the trans-Neptunian objects. Um, and it is an emerging field, but I was like, you know what? I'd love to hear what someone who I consider is one of the pioneers in this has to say about these objects. So yeah, I'm doing it as kind of like a research-based
That's
approach.
great. The other person, I don't know if you know this, but Jude Valentine,
Yeah.
who you met in Maine, she's also very, very involved with that.
She's
And
the
Alan
tutor in
Clay.
my
Yeah,
class.
okay. All right. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. So, I know that you do more than astrology. So I'm curious, and I know that you're working on something, so I'm leading into that.
Mhm.
Um, how astrology, how you working with astrology in your kind of day-to-day work?
Mhm. Yeah. So, well, I mentioned before that I'm adopted. I actually work for a nonprofit called Adoption Mosaic. I am their social media manager as well as a course facilitator for them, teaching courses for adoptive parents who are looking to raise their own adoption consciousness to a place of being more informed and just a higher level thinker about the nuances of adoption. The courses that I teach are more of the intense periods of life courses. So navigating estrangement, which is for adoptive parents who do not have contact with their adult adopted children at this point. There's been some sort of fallout. Um, I also teach seasoned parents, which is for parents who, again, have adult children and are looking to understand more to improve either their relationship or their understanding. So it's interesting because we talk a lot about consciousness and adoption and the trans-Neptunian objects. Astrology in general is all about a higher level of consciousness. So and the CEO, my good friend Astrid, it's interesting because she's not an astrologer, but she's been part of my journey this whole time as well on the professional development side. And she very much encourages me to talk about astrology in these
Well,
courses.
again, you can't make it up. Like that's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's really perfect, and it's interesting because a lot of people who are adopted, especially international adoptees, don't have access to their birth records, their accurate even
Boy,
date of birth. So kind of gently showing other adoptees the power of astrology, even without natal information, how you can live into astrology, how you can look at things that you are more certain about, the slower moving objects. Okay, well, where was Saturn the time you were born? Let's talk about that. Where was Chiron? I find Chiron, especially in adoptees who are leaders or professionals in the community, Chiron always super prominent in a chart. Whether it's
sure.
the apex planet of a yod or a yod-like structure, or it's just so prominently placed that I'm like, okay, this is a big key to how we can move through consciousness as professionals with this lived experience.
Wow. This is so fantastic. I mean, what an amazing gift for this population that you're offering this, honestly.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, yeah.
incredible. And then you mentioned to me that you're working on a new piece of curriculum.
hmm Yep, I'm developing a course with Adoption Mosaic. It's in its infancy. I would say right now. But it's for the adoptive parents again, and it's a more spiritual approach to understanding both their own self as well as their child, as well as their parenting experience, using the 12 signs to kind of explore archetypes, explore different points in their parenting journey, how their child was showing up for them. It really started because my practice has developed into I have kind of like two sets of clients. There's I love working with other astrologers. So I call myself, I don't really call myself this, but my husband's like, you are the astrologer's astrologer. And I'm like, oh, I
Yeah,
like that a
that's
lot. Yeah.
cool.
So I
Yeah.
have that side, which I kind of roll therapists into that too, because it's kind of very similar, especially with evolutionary astrology, the psychological component. And I find that just like in astrology, whenever you investigate a new avenue, a new aspect pattern, a new theory, a new technique, sorry, my cat is playing with my background. Whenever you do that, it can kind of unlock the next thing. Well, I find with my clients who are therapists, a lot of times astrology can unlock things in their own work, both personally as well as professionally, so that it can be a tool for them to use as well. So with these clients, you can do some of that like really intense high-end work. But then the other part of my practice is working with the adoption constellation, particularly during very pivotal times. So adoptees who are in early reunion and are navigating like genetic attraction or navigating like really intense emotions. Okay, let's talk about synastry. Let's talk about what's coming up for you. And we get consent, of course. Get your birth parents charts, get your birth siblings charts. Let's pull this all together and decode what's going on through an astrological lens. It can be incredibly powerful.
So I see a book in the making.
Yeah, I have
Have you
a
thought about that?
very well, I have a folder on my desktop that's called all the things for all the books I'm writing. And there's like
Forget just one book.
Aries rising, man. I got to get it under control because I have many books started and then I just move on.
That's
So,
okay. But you'll circle back when the time is right,
yeah.
you know? That is fantastic. Very,
Yeah.
very cool. So do you have formal education as a therapist or an
No,
astrologer?
I have formal education as a therapy. No, I'm just kidding, but I'm not. So I was in at least weekly therapy from the age of 14 until March of 2020, which is kind of hilarious because we all know what happened in March of 2020, about 2 weeks after I graduated from therapy. Um, I had a lot of mental health struggles growing up. I have a history of drug addiction, suicidality, all of that. Many different diagnoses, which I've now kind of reframed through an astrological lens that is much more empowering than taking lithium. Anyways, but yeah, so and it's interesting because I find that in my daily life, even before astrology, I tended to be friends with people who were either therapists as time went on, people who were therapists, people who were psychiatrists, psychologists, because they were like, "How do you know so much?" And I was like, "Well, I've done this from the other side for so long that it's my second language already." So we found that we could have really in-depth conversations about the philosophy or the theories around psychology, the history of it, that like it was kind of obvious that I was going to be an evolutionary astrologer like from the beginning because of that intense psychological approach to things. It got to a point though where I was the last group therapy that I was in, which was like 2019, right before I had my reading,
Yeah.
I was asking very high-end questions of the facilitators, and they could not answer what I was asking. And I was like, but you guys are in charge, and I am trying to get into the nuance of this because this is not working for me. But what I ended up coming to find out in 2020 was when I kind of came into conscious around adoption and relinquishment trauma, was that that was really the missing piece ever since my childhood. Our mental health system in this country is very behind when it comes to understanding the nuances of relinquishment trauma, of adoption trauma. I mean, that's a whole other conversation about the
Right,
business of children, of, buying and placing children that kind of prevents this from being more explored psychologically. So once that piece came in, it kind of unlocked this whole thing. Well, yes, they've always said that PTSD is my number one diagnosis, but no one knew why. They just said, you have PTSD and all these other things. And I'm like,
right,
okay, well, now I know what it is that caused my PTSD. It was that relinquishment trauma and then the subsequent lack of support for that throughout my childhood and adulthood. And now I can actually apply everything I learned in those 20 years and see why so many things didn't work. And now astrology is actually the tool that I find works the most because it makes sense of so many things in my experience, as well as the very natural responses to trauma that are then pathologized often.
right, right, right. Good point. Well, that's a lot. You have a lot to offer, a lot to share, and it's just beautiful to see that your path has aligned so beautifully with all of that. I mean, that's I don't know. It's got to feel very empowering, very like stepping into your own and um
Yeah.
I don't know, keep thinking of that Mars energy in your 10th too. What's Mercury in?
Cancer.
Okay. Yeah.
So the mutual reception between my Cancer Mercury and my Gemini Moon, I'm not trying to knock therapy. I think that it was great for what it offered me, but I did tend to intellectualize my emotions a lot. And
Okay.
this year is my year of feeling my emotions, and
Good for
it
you.
comes up constantly. Like every single, I did I forget the culture it comes from. It actually comes from a lot of cultures, but where you write down your 13 goals for the year, for the new year, and then you go outside and you burn one per night, and you don't look at what they are, and then the final day you open the last one, and so many of them were like very I am going to do all this stuff with astrology. I am going to do these things at work and get promoted. I am going to, and that those things did happen. The one that I opened was, I feel my feelings. And
Wow.
I was like, I just wrote that down because I figured it would happen anyways. And you're telling me that's all I need to do this year, Spirit? And then every new moon gathering I go to, every, my solstice pull, all of that, it all comes back to the same message. Like all you need to do is feel your feelings and everything else will work.
Oh, what a beautiful message. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Good for you. Oh, I love this practice. I want to hear more about that too. That's great. And then you also have a podcast.
hmm Yeah. So
So
my friend Kimber, I met at the Forest School for Evolutionary Astrology. We went through together. We were in the same cohort to begin, and her strongest planet's Mercury, but she has a very strong Pluto too. My strongest planet's Pluto, but I would say I also have kind of very strong Gemini energy, Mercury energy. And so we kind of clicked and hit it off. And what's amazing about it is when you work with someone on a podcast, try to find someone that you have a lot of oppositions to. Me and her have a lot of oppositions. And it's so beautiful because the tension that an opposition can cause to play out that tension on a live stream, not in a tense way, but in a more like building a bridge between the opposition. Well, what do bridges need to stay strong? They need tension. So building bridges of rapport, bridges of philosophical understanding to kind of pull everything in together. It's a beautiful experience for me and hopefully for our listeners as well. So
yeah, yeah, no, that's great. So
yeah.
so when do you air that?
Well, the channel is Existential Side Quests. We get pretty
Essential
existential.
side quest.
And we're on YouTube on Mondays at 3 Eastern, 3 to 4 p.m. We're in season 2 right now. We're both going
Cool.
to go to the United Astrology Conference. So that's going to be our season break before we start up again in September. But we're going through the beginning of August with season 2 right now.
Very cool. Good for you. So we'll have to make sure that that info gets included in the little write-up too.
Definitely.
I think folks will be interested in that. That's
Yeah.
great. So where do you see this all going for you? Do you have like a vision, or are you just open to seeing what comes your way, or both?
I'm very open to whatever the universe has planned for me. I find that whenever I try to manifest or I ask for something specific, I have Jupiter and Pisces in the 12th. Be careful what you wish for because you just might get it. That's actually a great plug because it's exactly what we're talking about next week on Existential Side Quest.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's great.
But it's funny, without going into too many of my clients' personal business, earlier this year, I was like, I really want to call in more spiritual adoptees. And
Hmm.
by golly, did I get some of the most spiritual adoptees. But it was very much a lot of people in crisis. And I was like, you know what, universe, how about you just give me whatever you think is most aligned? Because this has suddenly consumed so much of my life that I am now doing a lot of aftercare for people, a lot of holding people, a lot of resources for a lot of mental health support. And I was like, you know what? As much as this work is very important, this work is draining me a lot. So, I told the universe, you know what? Just send whatever's most aligned. I will accept that.
So
And
little refinement.
yes, exactly. I was like, please just give
Yeah.
me whatever medicine you want. And it was interesting because within a week of that, I was promoted at my job to facilitating more courses. Then I was asked to um, go to a in-person conference, an adoption conference, and co-facilitate the leadership summit. You
Wow.
asked me about the book club for NCGR. It was like boom, boom, boom. I was like, all right, I get it. I get it. This
Fascinating.
is what's aligned. Yeah.
Very cool. So it's funny because I was gonna make sure that we talked about the book group too. So that's perfect segue.
Mhm,
So I did ask you, I just felt like it's time for someone else to step in.
mhm.
Change is good and just again, different fresh perspectives. So I was so happy. You were like, yes, I'll do
Yeah.
the book. And then just the synchronicity of a particular book being recommended.
I have
Well,
it right here, actually.
oh, great. I just ordered it, by the way. So
Well,
mine,
it's fantastic. My
okay,
daughter's been having a lot of dental appointments, so I've been reading it in the dentist's office.
perfect.
It's been wonderful.
It,
It's like an hour, and I'm like, let
gift of
me just get
time
through some.
that you didn't
Yeah,
have otherwise. Um,
exactly.
but again, you can't make it up. Like, a book group member was like, "Oh, this would be a great book for when we start back up," and he did not know that you were going to be taking the group over. And so I said to him, "Oh, if someone else is going to be taking the group. I have no idea what their interests are going to be, but I'll pass this on." And you were like, "Holy crap. This was like totally aligns with this curriculum that I'm starting to work on." And like again, like it seems to me, outside looking in, that you are very, very in flow now. And maybe you haven't for some time, but it's just like all these things aligning and just you're doing the work and it's supporting you doing the work. It's just like so cool.
It is. It is. It's funny because I'm like, Neptune isn't even on my ascendant yet. How is this already going this way? Like by sign it is, but by orb I would not consider it on.
No,
So
but growing, yeah, and if it's in signs, so it's also good to note, right?
yeah,
um
definitely. I was reading it yesterday, and at one point I'm still in the introduction. I'm going slowly but surely. Don't worry, by the time we get there,
oh,
I'll be
i'm
there.
I'm not worried.
But it was in on page 19, it was talking about, can I just read a sentence from it? It
Please.
says, we can, for example, engage imaginatively with the cycle of a creation myth at any point in our lives that may constitute a new beginning, such as when a parent dies, when a relationship ends, when we lose our jobs, or when we have to recreate a sense of who we are and what our lives mean. And I highlighted this and I wrote Asclepius with the Atlas myth because one of the things that happened when I was in Greece last year, I've been back since because I'm obsessed. But we meditated at Epidavros, which is the ancient site of Asclepius and his daughter Hygeia. And I went there thinking I was going to meet Hygeia and it was going to be this great thing. And me and Hygeia weren't really vibing. And I was like, oh. But then when I went down to Asclepius, oh my goodness, it was insane. I'm
Wow.
sitting there. I saw this little thing that looked like a chair. You can actually walk on his site. Everyone should go. I sat in this chair. And the whole time I was there, I kept rubbing the stones. They don't want you to touch the things at Delphi, everybody. So if you go to Delphi, don't follow this advice. Olympia, you're fine. Everywhere else. But I would like touch them, put my ear up to it, almost like it was a record. And I'd start hearing things like cheering at Olympia. At Delphi, it was like a lot
Wow.
of like festival, like screaming and celebration and stuff like that. It was wild. But at Asclepius, I started rubbing the chair. I was doing the Lord Davantari chant for healing. I know that's the wrong culture, but I figured go with what you have. Um,
Overlap. Yeah.
yeah, I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner by training. It's not something that I do anymore.
Yeah.
That predates astrology. But anyways, so I'm like rubbing this chair and I drop in and I'm like in a medical office and I open the door and Asclepius is sitting at the desk. And I was like, what? Like I showed up as myself and he was like, hello, come on in. And
Wow.
I was like, what is going on? So I sit down in a chair and I'm like, Asclepius. And he was like, yes. He was very calm. And I was like, what? What? I was like, I can't believe this. And he was like, do you have any questions for me? And I was like, okay, yeah. What is the meaning of life? Like, let's go. Like, let's start
Go
there.
for it.
Yeah. And he was like, to have a human experience. And I was like, okay, that was a crappy answer. I was like, I guess I left it too open-ended. It was a great answer, but it
And
was
that,
also
yeah,
like, it felt
that's
very like he
interesting.
sidestepped it, to me at
Yeah.
least. And I
Yeah.
was like, all right. So then I was like, all right, let me ask you some other questions. And then I was like, you know what, Jenna? He's the god of surgery. Ask him a question about, I had this lump on my neck. And I was like, so I have this lump on my neck. I was like, the dermatologist removed it a year ago and she said that it wouldn't grow back and it has grown back. And I was like, what is going on? And he like flashed into me this picture of Atlas with the world on his neck or like holding it on his shoulders. And he was like, you have the weight of the world on your shoulders. You've done really well with setting boundaries in your life to relieve some of that, but you have to let go of the guilt. Don't have guilt about your boundaries. So he was basically telling me that this was symbolically, by mind, body, spiritual connection, Atlas's world. And I was making this unconscious choice to feel guilty about the decisions that I was making to relieve some of that pain. He said, you let go of that guilt and everything will be okay. It won't get it removed. Like I'm still a surgeon, but it won't grow back if you release the guilt. I was like, that is so interesting. And I'll save the rest of my Asclepius for a different time because it just
Oh, I
gets a
would
little
love to hear
onion.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was incredible. So I did have it removed and it has not grown back again. And it was funny because I went to a different surgeon this time and he said to me, he goes, do you have any questions for me at the end of the intake? And I was like, do you know who Asclepius is? He go- he double backed at me. He had on a bolo that had a crystal in it. So I was like, you might be, I'm really into crystals.
Yeah.
So he was like the god of surgery. And I was like,
Wow.
all right, you're hired. Like, if you know who Asclepius
Uh,
is. Yeah.
Very cool. I did not know that. So I appreciate this. This is really interesting.
Yeah. No, he's a very powerful, the surgeon's great too, but Asclepius is very powerful. It was interesting because at the end of the appointment with Asclepius, I asked him, I kept coming back in the room, like, how do I pay you? Like all this kind of stuff. And he was like, "Ugh." And I said, how do I get in touch with you again? And he said, he nodded over to the tarot deck that I brought with me, which is, did you know this interview was going to come with visuals? I didn't think
I
so.
love this. No, I love
But
it.
this is the deck, and it's called the Magical Forest Tarot deck, and the images are so like cute and gentle, like look at that little sheepy. And
Yeah,
he
nice.
nodded over at my tarot deck, and I was like, this deck? And he was like, yeah. And it was funny because it was sitting right there with me at the sacred site as I was meditating. And he said, and I said, Asclepius, this deck is so gentle. Like, really? And he goes, Jenna, has my energy been anything other than gentle? And I was like, all right, sir.
Point taken. Yes.
It was so good. And he goes, my next appointment is here. And he was like, you need to leave. And I was like, okay, bye. So I open my eyes and I look over. Now we're in real life. I look over, and one of the people that I'm there with, everyone else had left. I was like meditating for like 45 minutes. There were only like a few people there of the 40 on the trip. And I look over, and this woman standing right there. I hadn't talked to her the entire conference, none of it. And I was like, I just walked up to her and I was like, hey, you're Asclepius's next appointment. That's a chair.
Oh,
And she looked at me wide-eyed and was like, thank you. And just walked over and sat in the chair. She's a very private person, but I will tell you this. She came up to me after. We were both like cuddling each other, walking through the rest of the ancient ruins because we were so like, activated by the
whoa.
spiritualness. She said, Jenna, I saw that chair when I first got there. And then I saw you like beelining for it. And then I was like, I guess it's not for me. But the fact that I went and invited her back to it, she was like, I most powerful healing. Like
Right.
it was
Right.
incredible.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. That's an incredible, incredible offering. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So I assume you have more trips back in your future.
Yes, my husband is not as into returning to Greece constantly as I am. I did make our honeymoon there this past April into May. Completely different experience. Once again, Jenna, let go of the reins. I was like trying to recreate the journey I took with the forest school, and once I released that, the trip unfolded in the most beautiful ways. The gods are just so present there. It
Very
is
cool.
unbelievable. Yeah, but I can't wait to go back.
Well, maybe there's something in your future where you take a small group of people. That's what keeps coming to me. Kind
Yeah.
of like with the experience you've had and your interest in sharing so beautifully that who knows?
Yeah, it's interesting. I used
I
to,
would sign up to go.
oh, well, then I have one person so far. That's
Yep.
great. But I used to organize dog shows for the American Kennel Club, which is basically very similar. You're getting a group of older people to travel somewhere together, and then you have little people who are very famous within your community called dog show judges. That translates very easily to little famous astrologers. You bring them in, like it translates very easily.
Love it. I love it. So I don't know that folder that you mentioned on your desktop, which sounds like it's mostly for writing. Do you have a folder for like projects like this?
Um,
Not that
projects
you
like
have to.
projects
Like
like getting
like
people together for a trip.
well, like planning a trip.
Yes, I have my Greece folder because I
Oh,
saved
there you go.
all of the information. Yeah, yeah, you're right. I do actually already have those going on. It's so funny because even when I started getting really into septiles, um, I was looking at so the base of the boat is my moon and my sun. They're 51 degrees apart, so like woo. But I that day I was using AI to take pictures of my birth father and pictures of my birth mother who were teenagers and hadn't seen each other since basically a month after I was created. Not born, but created. And I was putting us in family photos together. And it said in David Hamlin's book, it was like, it didn't, this is not verbatim, but it was talking about this like kind of like romanticized obsession with trying to blend the energies of the planets. And I was like, that is so funny. I'm like using the romanticized AI to pull together the sun, my father, and the moon, my mother, with me in the middle of a family pic. It was so on the nose. I was like, oh, David Hamlin,
But
goodness.
that must be an amazing image that you created. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it'll never happen in real life, but
Oh, I know, but I don't know. You still have manifested it, created it in another way that makes it somewhat tangible. So that's cool.
yeah, it's
Good for
another
you.
folder on my desktop.
Oh, good for you. So just to wrap up the part about aspirations, so you're a consulting astrologer.
Mhm,
I know we've talked about, your potential interest in writing some number of books, um, teaching, mentoring,
mhm,
obviously, uh, in terms of I don't know what category you would put the podcast into, but it's another way of being an astrologer and sharing information. Um, Being of service,
mhm.
starting with the book group and who knows what else you might end up doing with that. So that it leads me back to what your husband calls you, an astrologer's astrologer. It's like, kind of like hitting all the boxes,
Mhm,
which
mhm.
some people only will ever be a consulting astrologer or, whatever it is. So it's going to be fun for me to watch this journey continue to unfold. I feel so lucky that I got to meet you in person. That was just like a great time that we had in
Yeah.
what was it, May?
I think it was March.
March. It was the M. Oh, I had the M. March, right. Um, so this is just great. This is great. All a part of the unfolding. Um, so anything else you want to share about yourself? Other interests that you have? You mentioned the Ayurvedic work, which I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, I really love Ayurveda. I blend it into my astrology a lot of times. I did study astrological remediation with Andrea for a while.
Yeah,
And I find for me, a lot of the remediation techniques that we studied, I relate it back to dialectic behavioral therapy. I think a lot of remediation techniques are really good for emotion regulation and distress tolerance. I
yeah,
find that Ayurveda offers, and the Ayurvedic approach to I'm not talking about Vedic astrology. I'm talking about Ayurvedic principles as applied to astrology. I find those really work well for the long term of emotion regulation. So it does end up kind of informing all of my work. I was also a plant medicine maker
cool.
for a while. My
Like
husband,
tinctures.
yeah, we recently gave up our medical license. We were growers here in Maine for a while. I belong to a spiritual congregation as well that very much is centered around molecules for therapeutic just self-discovery. It's work I've done on my own. It's journey work I've done with other people. It's not something I do currently facilitating that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But at the same time, it's something that I've seen come through my practice a lot is people who are looking to integrate those kind of experiences or people who are looking for kind of universal permission to engage those kind of experiences. So networking people, getting people the right resources, whether that's through Adoption Mosaic or through my astrological practice.
right.
I feel the idea of building bridges with Kimber through our oppositions in the podcast, I'm a bridge builder in life in general, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I am so happy you're a part of the Boston chapter. I look forward to our continued working together and just all that you're creating. It's really amazing, amazing
Yeah.
stuff.
Thank you so much, Liza. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, we'll say verbally, and then it'll be in your write-up. How can folks be in touch with you?
Sure, yeah. So the podcast is at Existential Side Quests, all one word on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram. Frequency Astrology is the name. My website is
Astrology.
frequencyastrology.com. And then
Okay.
my email is frequencyastrology@gmail.com.
That keeps it easy. Good, good.
Yep,
Okay. Great. And again, we'll have this all in the write-up so folks can have access to it.
definitely.
Ah, well, wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. And more to come, everybody.